how I got that figured out. That took me a second. I don't know what's green I'm supposed to be looking at. Cool, that'll do. I'll stay in this screen. I can't see, I don't know if anyone's here, so I can't see. But anyway, I'm just going to proceed, I guess, as if there is someone there. I've never done a live stream before, so I'm super nervous. I feel like I am giving a presentation at school or something, like when you're in high school and you have to do your public speaking. I feel like that. I feel so nervous. So thank you if you are here or if you're watching this later. It means a lot to me. So being my first live stream and being so nervous, I thought that I would just do some drawings of things that make me feel super comfortable, which is mushrooms, of course. So I've got this little vintage book. I'm gonna have a little look through, see what's kind of cool and catching my eye. I have a couple of ideas in my head as well because I'm so nervous that I've been preparing all night. The other thing is, feel free to ask me any questions. I did have a couple of questions coming into this, so I've got a couple of things that I want to talk about that I think maybe are useful for creatives or for people that like to draw, that kind of stuff. So I'm going to just get started on a little bit of drawing. I was at the markets recently and they had the most amazing mushroom growing kits. I think I'm going to have to get one. There was lion's mane, maybe shiitake, a couple of different ones, but they were so beautiful and so sculptural. Yeah. And of course these ones are always my favorite, the Amanita. I think I'm going to go for something like that. Alright, I'm going to jump in. Let me just check this. You don't tell me anything. Okay. Alright, I'm going to jump in with a little bit of pencil outline and just get started. And if you want to draw along with me, I would love that too. I'd love to see what you guys come up with, what ideas you have, that kind of thing. And hopefully the cicadas aren't too loud. Okay, I'm so nervous. It's probably a bit hard to see what I'm doing at this stage too, which is not super exciting. So I'll try and get through this bit kind of as quickly as I can. I had something in mind that I wanted to do, but I think it's not going to go that way, the way things are looking. I wonder if this is going to be difficult to draw and talk at the same time. I've not really ever tried to have those two faculties going at once, so I don't know how I'm going to go, but I'll just do my best. So one of the things that, I forgot to check your name. One of the things that I was asked, you know, in the lead up to doing this little live stream was where ideas come from or how I come up with ideas. And I sort of did my age old, like I have a few things, like you choose your subject, and then I have a few things that I like to add to that subject to try and add magic, I guess is how I think about it in my brain. So like today my subject's going to be mushrooms. I'm planning to add, I think, maybe celestial elements. I thought maybe a weather element, so I thought maybe clouds on these ones. I wanted to do a dark and light, but I don't know if that's how it's going to work out. And then I was thinking about other things that could form the dots on an amanita mushroom. So I was thinking about, because everyone's pretty keen on bows lately, that seems to be a bit of a visual trend. So I was thinking I might do one with some cute little bows, maybe one with hearts. I don't know, I'm sort of like so rattled and nervous that I don't really know how this is going to turn out. But anyway, thank you for that kind comment. Anyway, I'll try and get through this stage as fast as possible, because this is the sort of boring stage where I don't know, like it's super bright by this window, so I don't know if you can actually see what I'm doing, but I always do pencil layer first. Well, yeah, like usually do. And also this is something that goes with how I work in Procreate as well. So even though that's a digital medium, I still kind of work the same way in terms of like, I just have a layer that's like my pencil layer, and then I go over that with usually what would act like an inking layer, if that makes sense, like the sort of cleaned up lines. But I think this today, I want to, oh my god, I haven't even got out my materials. That's how scared I am. So for the alcohol markers that I use, I usually use Winsor and Newton. They're my favourites for sure. There's so many others. Copics I don't know if I've had much success with. I probably don't use them properly or haven't used the right ones. You know, there's definitely potentially a user error there. But yeah, Winsor and Newton have been my favourites so far. I want those ones to be like little clouds. That's a little bit experimental, so I don't know how this is going to come out. Maybe I also feel like maybe I should have drafted a little bit before I started this, but now you get to see the whole process, which is potentially me not doing this very well, which is all right too. And same goes for pencils, right? I think I have mentioned this in other videos as well. I have Prismacolors somewhere, but I don't love them as much as I love just the Staedtler Aquarel. They just seem to do the trick for me. I find where everything else is. I'm so disorganized. I thought I was really organized, but I didn't really have a great sleep last night. My little girls got a bad cough, and my partner and I did stay up trying to watch Goodfellas, which turns out that's a really long movie. Has anyone else seen that? I've not. I'm really bad with films, like I've never seen anything pretty much. So we're taking the opportunity to try and address that. It actually was like, I mean, of course, it's a classic, but it was a pretty amazing movie as far as we got. We didn't even make it to the end because our parents and they're sleep deprived. So I think I'm gonna, I don't want to move out of the frame, but some of these lines are really wild. I don't know if they might end up looking pretty funny. Sort of waiting to get into the flow of this a little bit. I feel like I'm still shaking a little bit. I'm that like nervous. Try and figure out what I want to do for this background, I think. It's definitely not that. No way, a movie every night. That's so dedicated. That's probably what I should be doing so I can catch up on all the like pop culture stuff that I just do not understand. I tend to do so I did watch a lot of TV over probably the past 12 months because I've had a little baby who I spend a lot of time holding, and also being like sleep deprived, so I would sort of just feed her and chill out and watch TV. But I was just watching the same stuff that I've been watching for my whole life, which is, just rewatching Justified. I definitely don't not need sources. So with something like this, I'm drawing really stylized, so I'm sort of not worried too much, because I'm not trying to get it right. Like it's not, and it's also like it's a simple form, I think. So there's some stuff that I can draw without reference, and it'll go okay. Especially if I've been drawing it a lot, because you sort of go through phases and you draw the same thing over and over again for a while. That's just the thing that you're into, and you sort of get used to it, and you can do that from memory pretty easily. Like there'll be like, I'm definitely in a horse phase, but I've been drawing a lot of horses for a while now. And so I can kind of do that without reference all the time. But as soon as you're going into sort of a complicated pose, or there's a lot of foreshortening in what you want to do, then you definitely, like, references help. And, oh God, what was I going to say? The other thing with references is you get that kind of, you get the detail that you won't get if you're just drawing from your brain. Like you get where this shadow should fall, which makes things just that much little bit more like sophisticated and interesting, I think. And I'd say I kind of, a lot of the time will be like sort of roughing out an idea. Probably more when I'm using Procreate is when I'm going to be doing things that require actual reference images. Like I'll do the most horrible composition sketch, like this is a circle that represents a whole horse, and then think about what the reference image is that I want. So I sort of have to get the idea into the world first, and then go looking for a reference image, if that makes sense. But yeah, I totally always recommend reference images. Like sometimes I just won't use them because I'm being lazy, and I just don't want to fall down an internet sort of rabbit hole thing, which I'm very liable to do if I start looking at Pinterest or somewhere as well. I don't want to start like a weird AI debate or anything, but how weird is it looking at Pinterest now? Or even like when I do search for horse reference images, like say I want a certain movement and I'm looking for that, the AI images that come up, that's all it is now, which is kind of not great. I mean, if it gets better at producing references, that would be cool, but the references at the moment are not even good, so it's not doing the thing that would be helpful. But anyway, I am just like old and cranky, I think. I don't know if this is going to materialise the way I'd hoped, but anyway. So this is so kind of weird. It's giving me flashbacks to working on I did live painting, which was sort of a weird thing for me to do considering that I don't even really paint. But yeah, I did a couple of live painting gigs so many years ago, probably like 5 or 6 years ago. And I was so bad at it, like I'd never even finished what I was working on. I'm a little bit worried now that I'm not going to finish what I'm working on here. I'm just going to have to be like, all right guys, that's it. I'm tired, we're going home. Which is pretty much what I did at the live painting gigs. It's just like, that's enough. Everybody's gone to the bar now and no one's interested in what I'm doing, so... But that was kind of a lifetime ago. I don't have to do that sort of stuff anymore, which is cool. Now I live out in the country. I'm far away from everything, which is kind of what I like. It's good and bad, I suppose. I want to know, if you're still there, what are the good movies that you're watching with your partner? What's good enough to beat doing art? Because I like, usually if I have free time, if we're going straight for doing some drawing. We were just watching a movie last night because I was going to hold the baby anyway while she had a little sleep. And for some reason I felt unreasonably confident that I could stay up late, which is not something that I ever do. I don't like how that's happened, but anyway. So one of the other things I was going to talk about was Procreate for beginners. I don't know if I have that much like useful information, because probably the most useful thing if you're starting out using Procreate is tutorials. So, you know, doing whatever you're doing, and then when you get stuck, Googling like how do I make a perfect circle, or how do I do this kind of blend, or whatever it is you might want to do. That's sort of how I taught myself most of the Photoshop that I used early on when I was learning that, and then I eventually went and did a little design course and learned a bit about Photoshop there, which was super helpful, and would always recommend, if you get the opportunity to do courses in those programs, it's never a waste of your time. I'd say probably the same with Procreate now. I would really like to put some time into doing a little bit of a Procreate course, like learning a bit more about how it actually functions, as well as Procreate Dreams. I don't know if anyone's ever used that program in here, but super interested to find out about that. I don't really know anything about animation, but it would be pretty cool, just because Procreate was such a change for everything. And also I'm just hopeful that someone will overthrow Adobe a little bit, because it's like, if you're using Adobe professionally, it's a huge expense. It costs more than like my car registration. It's pretty wild. This one's getting left behind for some reason. Oh no, I don't want to do that at all. Do I? Trying to think what else I've been thinking about that I wanted to talk about just for rambling's sake. I don't think I've ever talked for more than like 10 minutes on a subject. So I might be running out of things that topics, I guess is what they're called. Oh yeah, so my process with digital drawings or with digitizing work. So for the for the past like 12 months probably, so like more or less since I had my daughter, I haven't been doing a lot of commercial work. So I haven't been doing as much digital stuff or actually finished stuff, like work that will be used for printing, which nowadays I approach that kind of things with a really different practice to if I'm just drawing for fun or just to draw in my sketchbook. So if these were going to be used to turn into stickers or art print, well, maybe art prints I wouldn't worry so much about it, but probably stickers, definitely t-shirts, that's a sort of different approach, but I mean less so now as well. But the reason is that when you work in Procreate, you can, I keep bumping that, I'm so sorry, that's probably making people seasick. Yeah, so when you're in Procreate, you can be working on your layer and your drawing, drop your background out, and you have a perfectly transparent PNG, which is just like done for your sticker, or a lot of people that use what is that, like direct to garment printing for shirts and things like that. You can, like, I was so shocked when people were asking me for just PNG files for when we were doing t-shirt designs. It's like, oh, are you sure? Like, are you going to come back to me later and ask for this color separated or vectorized? And I'm going to be cranky because I don't want to go try and find this file. But yeah, it seems to be fine to be using PNGs for a lot of those printing purposes. So if I scan something like this in to use for print processes, it's painful. You've got to knock out the white, or you've got to try and live trace it in Illustrator, which is always a nightmare proposition. I wonder if it's getting better. I hope it's getting better. That would be a really helpful thing for AI to do, would be to be able to live trace things accurately without dropping detail. That's one of my major complaints. I want this. I think I did these backgrounds wrong. They're not what I wanted, but that's okay. We'll keep going. Yeah, so when I started making prints and doing that sort of stuff, which is probably 2024, nearly 12 years ago now. So I hope my information isn't like totally outdated. But yeah, so when I first started making art prints, I was doing all my work traditionally and just scanning it into Photoshop wasn't using Illustrator at all ever. Was terrified of the program. Every time I opened it, I was like, why is this not the same as Photoshop? Nothing here works. So yeah, I didn't use that until way further down the track. And would just clean things up in Photoshop, like take the paper texture away, change the level, sometimes change the saturation, make any tiny little edits that needed to be like fixed, or that kind of thing. And then when I started doing, the progression kind of is and was, you know, you're making your art and people are like, I'd like to buy prints of it, or I'd like to have some of that for myself. How can I get that? Depending on what you do, maybe that takes the form of prints or stickers or t-shirts or whatever. But so for me at the start it was prints, and then a lot of people like what I do seemed applicable to shirts, I guess. So that was the road that I kind of went down. And I had to kind of figure that out myself. So it's probably a lot of people I work with early on who are just like, what is this file? What am I supposed to do with this? But I got to the stage where I was, maybe I want to use purple. What was I saying? Yeah, so I got to the stage where I would kind of draw the separate layers. So I was still doing everything traditionally, and I would draw separate layers on paper, scan them in, like put them on the window and trace them so they lined up, so I knew which bits were like color fills and which colors, and like layer them in Photoshop. It was really, God, I'm so glad I don't do that anymore, but it was a very unwieldy kind of, oh geez, process. So I'm trying to actually remember like how I did all those commercial t-shirt graphic jobs in that way. But yeah, it was just a really long, it was the long way of doing things. And that's the way I did it for a long time. And then Procreate came along, and you were able to work on those different layers and separate them a bit. That was the other way I would do stuff, like fully by hand, put them into Photoshop and be selecting the colors and pulling them apart, which is also like a pretty inexact science. Like you get a bit of all the different layers. You don't just cleanly choose one layer doing it that way. So it was a bit of a wild process. So yeah, I did that for a while, and then partway through my career I got a scholarship to a design school where I learnt sort of more like I was saying, like the nuts and bolts of how Illustrator and Photoshop worked. So that was really useful because I could sort of wrangle Illustrator a bit more then, and that is really helpful when you're producing commercial files or files for commercial use, because you can get your vector files which can grow as big as they need to go, and yeah, just a bit more professionalism, I guess, than just like self-taught tutorials, which there is nothing wrong with self-taught as well. It's just there are things that are so specific in the design industry. If you're like crossing over from being an artist to a designer, which is where I sort of like swing back and forth all the time. So sometimes I'm more of a graphic designer than an artist. And especially if you're doing stuff like shirt graphics, which is like my favorite place to be, my favorite kind of work to do. It's yeah, you're creating something for a commercial use, and it needs to be produced a certain way, which is a bit of a learning curve, I guess. I still am not confident. I think there's a better way to create screen print files than the way I do it, even though I've been doing it for like 10 or 12 years. But maybe I'll research that one day and figure out exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. This is not really what I had in mind. I wonder why. Yeah, this is a really scary journey. You know, I'd avoided YouTube for years because I've been really lucky with like my Instagram community and just the people that have been around have always been super kind to me. Like I've only had a few interactions where people have been like unnecessarily mean or judgmental, and I'm super sensitive and shy and stuff like that. So the resistance to putting myself in situations where I might be kind of out of my depth or have people be like, what are you doing? Yeah, I totally resist those, and YouTube was one of the things that I was resisting as well, because it's like, oh, yeah, I didn't even really ever show my face on Instagram that much. I went through phases. I don't know. I just seemed to lose followers whenever I would post stuff that was about me personally. But the way Instagram is now, you lose followers whatever you do. So it doesn't matter. Yeah, I just kind of wanted, I don't know. I just felt really stuck. I think after my son was born, I was really stuck and just really like heartbroken about my career a bit. It is actually when the Instagram algorithm started to change, and I was like, I think I've misread this. I don't think I should be in this industry. I'm not good enough. Like everything seems to be falling apart. So I just kind of was like, all right, well, I live out here in the country where there are no professional jobs in the industry which I'm trained for, which is I trained as a journalist. So there's not really any journalism jobs around here. I kind of got to try and figure out how to make this work. So I just wanted to try to go down a heap of different paths. So YouTube was one of those things where I was like, well, this is something I've never done before. It's scary, weird, different to what I was doing before. Why not try that? And then I guess you just got to keep reminding yourself that no one really cares what you're doing. Like even like, you know, you think about, you definitely in the back of your mind, you're like, oh man, people that I went to high school with, or like, you know, people that made me feel bad in the past, or exes or things like that. You imagine them seeing what you do and go, oh my God, what is that person doing? Like, you know, you imagine yourself being judged by others, which is completely just something that goes on in your brain. They don't even care what you're doing. Like no one, people look at, like, even if people are going to judge you or something, they look at you for a second and be like, oh, that's not very good. And then just move on with their busy lives. Like to me, it's kind of more like, what's the cost of not doing what you want to do? Like if you feel like this is something you'd like to pursue or would be a pathway for you to do what you love to do, which is what has always been in the back of my mind with sharing my work online, and, you know, the cost benefit sort of weigh ups that you do is like, what's the cost of not doing what I want to do, or not trying to do it? Because that's the even worse one, is I think when it's so trite and so cliched, but you do remember all the things that you didn't quite give it 100% or go ahead and just do the thing. Like, yeah, I don't know. For someone who's very shy, I seem to just throw myself out into weird situations every now and then, for no real reason other than just to see what happens. It's been the same with my career, I guess. Like, I just left jobs randomly and took leaps here and there. I'm very lucky. I'm very supported. It's part of it. Obviously, like I said, I've got I did qualifications in a different industry, and I've always worked jobs in the other industries before I did this. So like I've never taken like bad leaps where it's been, do or die. Because people do sometimes advise that. They're like, jump and learn to fly on the way down. It's maybe not a great idea, especially not at the moment, but or if you've got family or stuff like that. But I think it's just, you have to keep checking in with your own brain about things like that. Like, one, it doesn't matter what you do to other people. Other people don't care really what you do. So if that's something that's holding you back, if you're having like these thoughts in your heads where you're playing out scenarios where people perceive you in a certain way, just, you have to keep checking back into yourself and going, that's not happening. And if it is, I don't care. It doesn't affect me. Like, what affects me is what I do in my life and what I actually get to do. Like, there is a constant battle with imposter syndrome, with I shouldn't be here, I shouldn't be the one doing this. So that would be my main tip, is you have to keep addressing yourself when you're saying, I don't want to do this, or I can't do this, or I shouldn't be the one doing this, like I'm not qualified, or because everyone has like something cool to share, or like something different, like a different perspective, a different life. Like it's, everyone's got something of value. And then like from a practical sense, I film most stuff on my phone. Like I record voiceovers walking around, like holding a sleeping baby. Sometimes I've definitely done that. And like editing videos. Look, I'm like not a filmmaker or anything. I don't know how obvious it is that I don't really have any filmography skills. But like I edit videos on my phone. Like I'll edit my longer videos on my phone now because I can't sit down at the computer. I don't have time with little kids. So like I'm a full supporter of just bootstrapping it. Just going for it, like using whatever you have. Phone cameras are amazing now. I did like my old Canon, my nice camera. It died a couple of years ago and we've just replaced that with a nice camera, and the footage is noticeably different, but I just don't end up using it because I don't carry around a big camera. I don't know what that means. It says there's a warning. What does that mean? Anyway, I've started reading The Artist's Way, but I am so bad. For someone who studied as a journalist and fully hadn't the identity as a reader, I have not read probably more than 5 books in the past 5 years, I'd say. I'm just terrible. I started reading The Artist's Way and probably got about 2 or 3 chapters in and just got distracted. I don't know if it's the internet or what is going on. I mean, it's having children as well. But yeah, I've got to get that under control. I'm definitely keen to give that one another crack. So yeah, help with imposters. It was just that I think the thing that intimidated me with that book was the requirements of time, like the commitments. I couldn't do the commitments. So the morning pages thing also kind of freaked me out. I did that for about, I don't know, a couple of days. But yeah, that having having to do the morning pages and the artist dates. And I was like, this is just the beginning. Is there going to be more? When you've got 2 little kids, like, there is no morning at the moment. There will be, like, when my youngest one gets a bit older, you know, there'll be time. And, you know, when they go to school, that kind of thing. I sort of, in my mind, I think, am putting it off until then, because I don't like, you know, like frustrating myself by trying to do things that I know are probably inachievable. But yeah, I'm definitely holding off to pick that one up one day. Yeah, so it is on my bookshelf. The other one I'm reading at the moment is I'm trying to read 12 books this year. That's my goal. I'm trying to get one a month, and I'm getting really worried because it's already like a week into January, and the book that I'm reading I've not made very much progress on. But I'm reading that Rick Rubin, The Creative Act, and I love it very much. It's definitely changing the way I'm thinking. Is that making the camera wiggle? Yeah, it's definitely changing the way I'm thinking and processing. Okay. Yeah, I mean, maybe I could do the artist way if I could compromise a little bit, but there's part of me that hates that too, and like don't like to compromise on things. Like I want to do things properly, but you know, it's better done is better than perfect, is the saying. Yeah, so what I'm using right now for overhead camera, that's my phone in, can you see that? Where is it? The video that I'm looking at is not in real time, so now I've moved that and I don't know what's happening. This is an armature that I got from a company I won't name. You all probably know what that is, and we shouldn't shop there. But yeah, that's just a clamp, like an armature clamp that clamps onto the desk. My phone, usually, I think the overhead camera is always the holder and light. Yeah, I am gonna have to say that I got that from Amazon, which is not very good because we shouldn't shop there. It's just it was there. I bought it probably 4 or 5 years ago, and it was just like the standard generic this thing and a ring light, but the ring light since stopped working, which I need to replace. But they were really great. It does have a brand on it which says Neewer, I think. Neewer. I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, that setup has worked really well for me, which unfortunately I have to recommend that it did work really well. The other reason there's really good light in here is I'm sitting right in front of a big window. It's not very good in summer. Luckily today's really cold by summer standards here in Australia. But yeah, so I'm sitting in front of a window, which helps. So we've got natural light source. But yeah, I did have a really good ring light for a while. Now it's broken, but I'll need to replace that eventually. Which, yeah, actually thanks for asking that, because it's made me actually look at the brand instead of just going online and randomly buying the wrong thing, which is probably what I would do. Just try and like eyeball it and see if it looks the same. Creative, yeah. Who's Creative Calling by? Is that another Julia Cameron one, or is that someone else? I'm finding that the Rick Rubin one's really like spiritual and like pretty far out, which I'm liking, but it's making me feel kind of crazy, like more crazy than usual. I don't mean crazy, I mean like just leaning into the woo of things, you know. So it's a bit of a different feeling. I don't know if I'll do these ones in the middle here, because this is, I feel like I've been talking for so long. And it's wild. I do really want to do this one with the bows though, because I think that's a cute idea. The other one that, the other book that people have recommended to me is Big Magic, I think. Has anyone read that one? I don't know. And I started reading Atomic Habits and stopped. Which is just tracks for my starting to read things and stopping. I don't know if I'm making excuses, but it sort of feels like, for me at this time with the kids and everything, that I'm like, some of this stuff just doesn't apply. Like there is no extra like space to pull from. Creative core. Yeah. I do, like, I know I sort of was a bit like bashful about saying that it was woo-woo and spiritual and stuff, but I do really love that stuff, because it does, I guess when you're dealing with like imposter syndrome and stuff, you're questioning the worth of what you're doing. So when you look at it in a spiritual way, you can be like, oh, well, there is some value. Like I'm not just, you know, being childish, and because that's what my imposter syndrome often says to me, is like, you're just acting like a child, you know. Get a real job, I think, is probably the voice that's in there. So yeah, when you see it as like a spiritual process, then you see the value of knowing about creativity and practicing creativity and sharing it. That's a huge part of giving value to why you would share your work, right? Like, because it's of importance to us as humans. You're not just like, hello, which is sometimes how I feel a bit on social media. Yeah, it's a weird gap between being on social media and doing your work, I suppose. Yeah, I like having so many ideas and not knowing where to start, or sort of like not having the capacity for it. Totally agree with that. And not knowing in myself, sometimes I'm like, am I just trying to avoid, like, and the reason that I would avoid something would be because I'm afraid of it, or like I'm afraid of failing, or afraid it won't work out, which is definitely something I'm working on at the moment with a couple of projects that I'm working on that are personal projects, not commercial projects, where I know that I'm afraid of them, and I'm afraid to start them because I'm afraid that it's not going to work, or it's going to be too hard, or like it's going to be a failure, which I think is kind of, and so I'll get myself into a thing where I just keep chasing ideas. Like I'm like, oh, I need to find more references to do this, or let me make a list of all the parts that are going to be in this. And I kind of catch myself trying to find ways to not begin, I suppose. Yeah, I don't know. I think the anecdote to that is antidote. Ooh. I think the antidote to that is you have to put aside all the planning and just start on one thing, and stop looking at the big picture, and just try and like do the one thing that you know you are going to be able to do. That's usually my best like entree into starting something that I know I'm putting off or avoiding somehow. That didn't go exactly as I had planned. So I'm doing this one a little bit different to the others, using black outline, which is, that's me going into my comfort zone. This might be the last one. I don't think I'll do that one. Is that a cop out? I hope not. Just getting tired, and I'm sure you guys are probably sick of hearing my voice by this time. Yeah, we're coming up on an hour, so I'll probably finish this one and call it. Yeah, to stop thinking the big picture. It's so hard because the planning stages can be so exciting too, I guess, because you're not doing any of the stuff that's like, it's not the hard slog, it's the fun part. Am I about to wreck this with this colour? Yep. This is going to be the girliest mushroom ever, which I'm not sad about. I think the other thing too that I find like stops me from, and has stopped me in the past on things, like when I get stuck, is the possibility, I suppose it's the same again, it's just that it's going to fail, but the possibility that you're going to put all this time into something and it's not going to be worth all of that time, which is especially something I know when you're like working another job, or again like got kids, or you've got other things going on in your life that are taking up a lot of your time. Is like that time's so precious, and you're like, I've got to get this right, like I need, if I'm going to do this thing, it needs to land, and it's such a bad pressure, like you're never going to win with that feeling breathing down your neck. I'm pretty happy with how it came out with a little bit of a gradient. So those alcohol markers, I don't really like, I don't always blend them. There is a blending texture somewhere, and I'm also not using the right kind of paper as well. I'm just using like the normal sketchbook that I like using. So they don't always blend so well, but that one, I feel like those two blended together really nicely. So thank you to those little textures. All right, I think I'm going to wrap this up here. Feels like a little bit of a cop out. There's only one more to go. Oh, thank you. It's I find this kind of stuff like so much more fun now. I used to just be strictly Posca pens, fine liners, really tight line work all the time, really finished stuff. So now it's way more fun. I feel like doing a little bit more scribbly stuff. Could get much more scribbly, that's true. I am going to do this one real quick. We're going to do some little hearts. Because I've been thinking about Valentine's Day stuff. I've got no idea what my kids are going to be like. They're so funny, like they just come up with just different things to be amazed by all the time. So my daughter's really young. She's 10 months. My son is 4.5. So he's showing a bit more of his personality. We sort of see a bit of what he is. He does draw with me a fair bit. I've got some of his drawings somewhere around here. I just love it so much. Kids' drawings are the best. They're just so funny. But yeah, he loves it. He loves drawing at the moment. But he's also a huge, like, outdoorsy kind of guy. He's a big nature guy, which is probably my favourite part of it all. You know, I love all that stuff, and I feel like that was a gift that my parents gave to me. Being real science nerds. So I'm happy that he has that too. It's also funny because, you know, you've got your genetics from both sides. My partner is a real, like, sporty, outdoorsy, very coordinated in a way that I am very uncoordinated. So I am jealous of that inbuilt skill. But yeah, could be anything, those kids. Yes, yeah, I do take pics all the time. The one that I like most is doing, like, landscapes or skies. We get some nice skies out in the paddock, so I like taking pictures of that. And yeah, different bugs. The annoying thing with being in nature, though, is you usually can't get that great a shot, like, unless you're a good photographer, which I'm not really. But, you know, like, you see a cool bird and you're like, oh, I'd like to draw that later, or just sort of want to record that. They're so far away, usually. So usually the photos that I end up with are not really worth using for reference, but sometimes it's good just to have a record, and then when you go to record those things in your sketchbook, because I really do like recording a whole bunch of things where you're like, oh, this is the vibe of this day or this trip, like documenting, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, so if you're going to do something like that, you know, you can look through your phone and be like, oh yeah, there's that faraway bird that I thought looked really cool, and actually look up what it might have been and get a better reference image. I think that's probably more likely what I would do. All right. I think I'm going to say that's about it for that one. That's the longest I've ever talked in my life. Thank you so much for coming along and being here. Thank you for all your questions and conversation. That's been really, really a special and lovely experience for me, because I'm always in here by myself, just chattering away in my head, I guess. So it's really nice to share this with you guys. Thanks so much. And thank you for the book recommendations. I'm going to try really hard this year to get through some of them. All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to go.